Hello, you're listening to a special interview episode of Popcorn Podcast with Lee and Tim, where we speak to the Oscar-winning director of The Son, Florian Zeller, about his new movie.
I'm Tim Ifland, movie buff.
And I'm Lee Livingstone, entertainment journalist.
And we love to talk all things movies. Now, The Son is a drama following a family as it struggles to reunite after falling apart. Peter's new life with his second wife and their infant is upended when his ex appears with their troubled, distant and angry son Nicholas. While Peter strives to take care of Nicholas, he reaches into his own traumas to try to break the damaging father-son cycle, but loses sight of how to hold on to Nicholas in the present.
The Son is directed by Florian Zeller from a screenplay by Zeller and Christopher Hampton.
The Son stars Hugh Jackman, Laura Dern, Vanessa Kirby, Zen McGrath and Anthony Hopkins.
The Son is a film about guilt, family ties and ultimately love, adding a compassionate voice to the discourse around mental illness.
The film is written and directed by playwright turned film director Florian Zeller, the second in his spiritual trilogy of stories about mental health. His debut feature, The Father, won him the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay in 2021.
Yeah, and it also secured Sir Anthony Hopkins with his second gold statue for his incredible tour de force performance as a man suffering from Alzheimer's.
Popcorn Podcast is thrilled to sit down with Florian Zeller for a second time. We last spoke to him before his historic Oscar win 2 years ago to discuss what draws him to tell stories often seen as taboo topics and how challenging it is to deliver a cinematic adaptation of his play.
Yeah, we also talk a bit more about working with screen greats like Anthony Hopkins and Hugh Jackman, as well as what led him to cast Australian actor Zen McGrath and the importance of having open discussions about mental health. So let's take a listen.
You think you can just live your life doing whatever you feel like?
I don't know what's happening to me.
Welcome back to Popcorn Podcast, Florian. When my co-host Lee spoke to you around this time 2 years ago, it was right before your exciting Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar win for The Father. Now, almost 2 years on from that, how do you reflect on that period?
With a lot of gratitude, I would say. It was slightly special because, as you remember, everything was virtual at that time. So it was winning an Oscar through Zoom, basically, kind of. But no, very grateful because, thanks to that, I find a way to finance The Son, which would have been like a hard film to finance without the Oscars. So I would say gratefulness.
Now, speaking of The Son, of course, it tackles a variety of really challenging but important themes in family, trauma, of course, mental illness and second chances as well. While The Father dealt with dementia, why do you think you are drawn to exploring these sometimes taboo topics?
It's because I feel like, there are many reasons for us to go and watch movies, but one of them could be to try to, look at a mirror and watch ourselves, to find things or to experience things about ourselves and to learn things about ourselves. And talking about mental health issue, I think that it is something that we need to talk about that is so important and, so present in our world nowadays. I feel like we do not feel comfortable about watching it.
Now, here in Australia, where I'm from, mental health is of course like a huge concern amongst men who don't talk about their feelings. And I know Hugh Jackman is a huge advocate of opening up the dialogue around mental health too. Why do you think as a society we find it so hard to talk about mental health openly?
Because there is something that is not easy to explain or to understand. At least this is really what I try to do in that film. It's not to try to explain or to justify the pain, but to watch it as it is in real life, something that it's hard to completely understand and explain. We all have friends in our lives that on paper, they have everything in their lives to be happy and still they are struggling. There is not only psychological reasons or explanations, there is also biological and sometimes even chemical reasons. As soon as it comes to mental health issues, we all feel, especially parents, that in a way we should know how to deal with that. We should be part of the solution. And we are starting thinking about what did I do, for my son to be such in pain or for my daughter to be such in a difficulty. And it's all about guilt. And I think that's not the right way to help people who need help. And the more we could see mental health issue as we do see physical issues, I mean, the more we could help others. I mean, the difficulty for us to watch it is to be confronted to something that is inexplicable somehow. And this is really, really uncomfortable, disturbing. And at least this is exactly what I try to do in that film, without trying to resolve the situation or to give some clear explanation as if it was in a more Hollywoody way. I really try to put these characters, the parents, in front of this unexplained black hole.
Yeah, it's such a complex topic. And I guess that's why it's so important to find ways through art, through films like yours, like The Son, to open the conversation about mental illness as a first step for many people in some instances, because it is confronting, the film's confronting, the topic's confronting, but it's a matter of breaking down those barriers, isn't it, in some small way?
Sure. To me, it started with the play because The Son was first to play. And what happened is that when we did the play on stage in Paris, and it was the same then in many countries, but people were waiting for us after every performance to share their own story, as if something was starting, as soon as the play was ending, finishing. And it was like a conversation, and people were saying, I know what you're talking about because my daughter, because my son, because my uncle. And I felt that, they wouldn't have mentioned that in another situation. And so this is where I started to dream about making a film in order to dare facing this issue without making it too gimmick or too seductive somehow, and to try to do something very straightforward, very simple, very linear in a way, to reflect what was my approach, which was not to shy away from this uncomfortable black hole, and to try to open the conversation through this story and the feeling of powerlessness that it explores, and all the frustration that could come with it for the characters and also for the viewer.
Now, you mentioned your plays before, which I guess is where you started the conversation initially. And now you've adapted 2 of your plays into feature films, which presents its own challenges in making it feel cinematic rather than theatrical. How did you and co-writer Christopher Hampton collaborate to achieve that cinematic feel this time?
It's not about filming a play, it wouldn't be very challenging. And it's about trying to find the cinematic language to tell this specific story. But I feel like every story requires something different. It's true that as soon as you think about adapting a play into a film, the first ideas you have is always to try to write new scenes to make it feel more cinematic. And this is exactly what I did not do for The Father. Remember, everything was shot in apartments, because I wanted to use the set to tell the story and to make the viewer experience what it could mean to be completely lost in this mental space somehow, and in order to experience from the inside what it could mean to lose your own bearings. But for The Son, it was completely different, and because I wanted to do something very linear, it was easier to open it up, to do something that was more conventional in terms of cinema. My first instinct was to set the story in New York, because I didn't want to tell a French story or a British story. I didn't want to tell an American story neither, but I wanted to tell a story that was a bit wider than that, because I thought that it's universal and this kind of story happen and could happen everywhere and to anyone. And to me, at least, New York was the crossroad of our world, and it was a way to put this story under our eyes in a broader way. And the opportunity also through the adaptation was to add new things. Of course, for example, the character that Anthony Hopkins embodies in the film is an additional character. I mean, it was in the play as a ghost, but I really wrote this scene with him in mind, and it became strangely like a pivotal scene, because it's called The Son. And as I said, it's really told from the father's perspective, from Hugh Jackman. But I wanted the audience to understand at some point that maybe he is the son of that story. He's still a son, at least, in pain and struggling with his own past, struggling with his own father. And so trying to be the father he never had, or to be a better father than the one he had. And probably that's why he's not capable to deal with his present, because he's too much taken by his own past.
I've had that scene, that two-hander between Sir Anthony Hopkins and Hugh Jackman play over and over in my head. It's so powerful. Anthony is terrifying in The Son. It's reminiscent of the roles he is iconic for, but very different to the father, obviously. What was it like seeing that kind of performance from him firsthand when you were directing him?
After The Father, many people came to me and asked, is he okay? As if he was going through dementia himself. And I was like, yes, he's a great chef. He's just an extraordinary actor. So it was exciting for us just to do something almost opposite to what we did in The Father. And it was also a tribute to what he did in The Father, proving that, it was really like a performance. And it was the first time for him to be back on set since The Father because of COVID as well. So it was like a real emotional reunion for us. And also it was the first time that they met, Hugh Jackman and Anthony Hopkins. And to me, it was so meaningful to have them in the same frame. I love them very, very much. And I had that feeling that something special could happen between the two of them. And this is what happened, I think.
Yeah, it was very special. Now, speaking of casting, Nicholas is such an important character to get right. How did you ensure that his struggles with mental illness felt as authentic as possible?
In the first place, I didn't want to ask any actor to do like the cliche, depressing performance, that you can expect from a depressing topic. I feel like, when you are such in pain and you are 17 years old, if you can't do it, you're trying to hide your condition to your parents. And so it's about a certain opacity that I was looking for. Someone that you don't know how to read, his face and what is going on inside his soul. And this is something I was looking for. And at some point I received Zen's tape. And really, as soon as I saw it, I felt that it was right, that he was the right person. So I met him once on Zoom just to see how he would react to my direction. But I had already taken my decision. It's a pure instinctive decision. And even though it was very complicated for me, the fact that he was coming from Australia because of COVID, he was not able to travel. And we met for the very first time 2 days before we started shooting. And also there was like an additional challenge, which was the accent. Despite of everything, I had the conviction that he had the combination of fragility and strength, to do that. And we were all very impressed. I mean, on set, by him and by his capacity to explore all these layers of emotions in a very professional way, I would say.
I spoke with Zen the other day, actually, and he shared how liberating that process of how you direct your actors through not much rehearsal time. You encourage them to be in the moment and use themselves personally in their performance. That creative and kind collaboration that you offer to set was met with grace from him. How does that make you feel to hear that was his and your other cast members' experience and how you worked with them?
It's really, really the most exciting, intense moment of making a film, to share this discovery with actors. And I was really grateful to them that they allow me to create a special process, I would say, and they follow me, the way I wanted to do it. But it started with Hugh, to be honest, because he's the one who contacted me in the first place. He knew that I was working on it. He knew the play. And so he wrote me a letter to say, if you are already in conversation with another actor, please forget my letter. But if you're not, I would love to have 10 minutes with you to let you know why I should be the one to do this film. And I was really impressed and moved and surprised also to receive such a letter from him. We didn't know each other's, but for what it means in terms of honesty, courage, depth, and humility also. So we met on Zoom together, and after 10 minutes, I made the decision to work with him, not because of something that he would have said, but really because of what I felt or what was going on between the two of us. He was not the actor trying to catch a role for a specific performance. He gave me access to the man he is, and I felt strongly that he knew deep down, something about that story, about the emotions that I wanted to explore, and that he was, as a man, as a father, and as a son, he was connected to that story, and that it was meaningful to him to tell that. So I thought that it would be the opportunity for him just to allow himself to be himself in front of the camera. And that's because I wanted to do something as impactful, meaning as truthful and as authentic as possible. And because I felt that he had everything in himself, the work would be mainly to try to explore that together. So it means that this is the reason why I made the decision not to rehearse and to work this specific way.
I think it really comes across on screen, the authenticity of all your actors' performances in telling this story as truthfully as possible. And Hugh is incredible in the film. I have to call out one of my favorite scenes is when Peter and Beth get up and dance. It presents as a moment of light amongst the darkness. What else does that scene in particular offer?
I think that's exactly this, the fact that it's never simple. And also, he's this kind of person saying, it's going to be okay. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to fix the situation. And at some point, we want to believe him, we want to feel like maybe it's going to work like that. And when they are starting dancing, we can feel almost the joy, the new family joy of it. And we are about to think, maybe he's right, maybe this is the way to deal with this kind of situation, in a way to be like that, and to believe, as Anthony said, to get over it, and suddenly, no, it doesn't work. There is something darker, there is something deeper. And if you do not dare looking at it, facing it, it will explode on your face. And this is what happens.
I also found it quite funny that Hugh's character took quite some convincing to get up and dance, which is funny when you compare Hugh, is known for singing and dancing. How do you direct someone who knows how to move and dance to come across a bit clunky and goofy?
Yeah, but, to pretend you do not know how to dance, somehow you have to know how to dance, as an actor.
Sure.
But it was funny because, the day before we shot, he experienced few versions of this slightly embarrassing dance scene in front of his daughter. And he was like, should I try harder? And she said, no, you're fine. Don't worry. And so he came on the morning. He said, okay, I have few versions. I'm going to do it. And you pick the one you feel like is the most embarrassing. It was really funny to do that. Yeah.
Oh, kids never hold back from telling the truth. So I think you used the right point of source for that feedback. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time. I personally cannot wait to see what you do next. But what is next for you? Will it be closing out the chapter of your spiritual trilogy with the mother?
I don't know, Tim. That's a possibility, but I really don't know yet. I'm still, in this position where I need to let this film live its own life, as we have to do with our own children at some point. And I hope then I will have more space in my brain to explore what I want to do next. But today I do not know. Well,
on that note, all the best for the success of The Son in its continued release. Take care.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.
That's my little boy. I can't give up on him.
Lee, I now completely understand why you enjoyed speaking with Zeller so much those few years ago. He is such a generous man and clearly so passionate about the subject of mental health and encouraging healthy conversations about it in society.
He's so great to chat to, isn't he? And his way of working with his actors is also really interesting. It certainly delivers a really powerful product through the performances, especially when it comes to Hugh Jackman in this film and Anthony Hopkins in his first film, The Father.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So if you enjoyed this interview as much as we loved bringing it to you, don't forget to follow us on your preferred podcast platform, because our bite-sized The Son movie review will also be to you soon.
You can also find this interview over on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe and check out our other interviews with Zeller and Hugh Jackman while you're there. We really, really appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Thank you. So The Son is in Australian cinemas from February 9.
We recommend that you go and check it out.
As always, friends, thank you so much for listening.
We'll catch you next time. Come and join in the conversation. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at Popcorn Podcast.